This 4 o'clock hour, Brigham Young Television, and Brian Etheridge and the crew, when they were up in Provo, was able to visit with them. And I know a couple of the people are. David Nixon, former A&M Consolidated and Brigham Young football player, is on the crew. He's on vacation here pretty soon. But Spencer Linton put this up. This is from an interview with Brett Yormark as Brigham Young is counting down the entry officially midnight Friday into the Big 12. I'd like to stay at 14 teams even with the departures of Texas and Oklahoma. Candidly, it's not so much a number that we're thinking about. It's really more about the fit that's critically important.
So, I mean, there's different ways you can interpret that. To me, my first impression was he has two schools in mind that are fits. And whether it's the two schools that we're all thinking of or two other schools, but he has two schools in mind that he thinks are fits for the league, and that's what he wants to do. So, because if you know, like you said, 14 being the number, well, if there's no one who is fit, then 12 would be the number. So he sees two schools out there that fit to make it 14. And
after Texas and OU leave to make it, you have to add two more. Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the math when he said that. I just took it as like he doesn't really want to add, but yeah, they'd have to add in that scenario to make it 14. So yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know. I think, yeah, we can presume who those two are. We've heard a lot about them, and you know, their respective reciprocated interest has been reported to varying degrees, but we know Arizona and Colorado have at least had talks, and I know that there's others that may, you know, say, well, that's nothing, that's just whispering, and that's like they try to. Bottom line is, they've talked. Okay, they've talked. They've talked to what degree, to what actual interest level. We don't know that. Everybody can debate on that, but we know that they've talked. That can't be debated. And so, yeah, that interest has remained there throughout the last few months. They've not made any bones about it. They haven't hid it. They haven't hid their interest in other schools as well. But yeah, I never really thought the idea of like a 24-team league was really all that realistic or really made all that much sense. I mean, it gets to a point where, you know, Gonzaga's going to UConn midweek for like basketball, and you can kind of justify basketball to an extent, but even then, you know, that's just asking a lot to blow up any further. And I think that, you know, being at 14 is probably a good, nice round number that doesn't dilute the pool too much, and, you know, keeps you strong and also adding and strengthening, but, you know, doesn't like I said, doesn't dilute the pool too much. So that would make sense. If it's Arizona and Colorado, that would make sense. You know, if it's some other combination, Gonzaga, UConn, I guess you could make some sense of it, but that would be a really only basketball season type of a thing, I suppose. But, you know, there's the caveat with UConn and their football program of how would that work? Are you going to have 13 football teams, you know? So, yeah, I mean, interesting to hear him say that, and I just take it as like, hey, Arizona and Colorado, we're open for business, and beyond that, we're going to be super selective, and we may not do much of anything. We're certainly probably not pursuing the 6, 8, 10 more teams like some have speculated.
All right, here's what Yormark has said before. They have to add value. Well, no one's going to add anybody if they don't add value. What the Pac-12 may be looking at, of course, is adding, whether it's San Diego State and or SMU, whenever they get to that point, they're doing that. You have to be able to add value. And does it fit your conference? There are some that don't fit the Big 12, that don't fit the SEC, it don't fit the Pac-12, ACC, or the Big 10. So if you get that and you also have value, because we've heard, and Mack Rhodes confirmed this, that the Big 12, with I guess it's both Fox and ESPN, that there is a pro rata. If they add somebody, they will be added into the mix. More money comes in that will be of equal value to whatever each team is supposed to get.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to bring that value in, not just for the conference, but for the TV deal and the contract to match.
Which would make sense in that if you're talking about Arizona and Colorado, Arizona, if you're picking a Pac-12 school that was always a Pac-12 school, seems to be more like Big 12 schools. Tucson's more of a Big 12 town than many of the others in the Pac-12, obviously. And Colorado was already in the Big 12. So culture fit there is a pretty seamless thing, which is why maybe if you talk about culture fit, why Arizona State maybe isn't so much of one, because they are very much more kind of trying to have a Pac-12 vibe than maybe even Arizona does at this time. So, yeah, that to me would make – that's why, look, Utah, like might be a culture fit in the long term, but they very much want to be in the Pac-12. That's what they want. They don't want to be in a conference.
Do.
Yeah, but Utah in particular really does not want to be in a conference with BYU, because if they did, they could have done that at any time in their entire history. Like I think those are things that they're kind of important to their fan base and their people. So I think that's why Arizona and Colorado make the most sense if that were to be the case. And again, I agree with you. I think most of them don't want to have to go through all of it.
I don't think any of them want to leave, but when the door is open and you feel like that door is more valuable to you, you have to look behind the door, which is what Jim Williams' tweet yesterday was saying when he was getting that quote that, Craig, you nailed it when we were kind of like jumping around on it, that listen, it's not trying to be picky about getting the Big 12 or telling them what to do. It was just we have to look on what is on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, you don't marry the first pretty girl that you see, right? Like, especially if you've got a lot of pretty girls that are chasing you, probably just say, hey, weigh my options here. Who do I fit best with? Who am I going to get along with the best in the long term? How financially stable are we going to be? Like, all those types of things. I think you're going through suitors, right? And Arizona and Colorado have more than one suitor at the moment, and that's been public for a while, and perhaps others do as well. And so they've just been more open to the idea of like, maybe the grass is greener over here. I don't know that. I like where I am, but I'm going to at least check it out and see for sure before I make a lifelong decision. And that's all they're doing, and they're doing what's in their best interest, and that makes sense. And as far as Yormark goes, I mean, in regards to the question specifically, it had to do with not just adding teams, but it had to do with the concept of, hey, you've got 16 teams, there's more money. You've got 18 teams, there's more money. 20 teams, even more money. And that's not the way that it works. And I don't think that's a common held belief, but I guess there's enough of a belief there in some portion of the crowd that's why the question was brought up was, more teams don't necessarily equal more value. And so, there's got to be the additive piece, and those two we know to some degree would likely be additive. Otherwise, we would have moved on from this a long time ago. So they're waiting like they've been waiting. And obviously, if there's that opportunity, they're going to strike while the iron's hot. But if not, I think he sounds as though he's fine with the current configuration. And then beyond, an Arizona, Colorado, or beyond perhaps what you'd pivot to as far as a UConn, Gonzaga, or something along those lines, he sounds content to stay where they are because, again, having 18 teams doesn't mean that everybody's making even more money. In fact, they could be making less depending on who those teams are. So they're being selective and being smart with it.
It's 411, 365 Sports.